and it's out into the wild in general, and it's working its way through the mass consciousness. It will be very interesting to see the effects of this, no matter what the outcome.
We have the work of Terence McKenna, in which he states that we are nearing a singularity, a state in which the rate of change is perceived by the human mind tends to infinity, and obviously, the more potential for change, the more possibilities.
Clif, how much of the earthquakes do you think related to seismic weapons versus the 2012 meme?
Weapons is so hot, and there's very little in the way of CFR kind of thing or powers that be kind of stuff that would tend to corroborate it. Yeah, it appears that they're doing it or have the capacity, but I can't separate out a regular earthquake from that in our language. Sorry, I just can't help that way.
Can you spend with us? I know we've gone over a little bit because of our situations earlier. Do you have a few more minutes to ask a few more questions?
Good. Certainly 10 more minutes, but I don't know how much beyond that.
Cliff, does anybody talk about Patrick Gerald's work about does it have shown it in the data that might happen in 2012 or in the future?
Issue about Patrick Gerald has to be also stepped out to include people like Morris or Maurice Cottrell and others who are looking at the Maya, what they did, and the huge number of mathematical clues they left us pointing to the sun as being a real issue relative to sunspots specifically. So it's not just Gerald. Also, all these other people now. Maurice Cottrell stopped. He saw certain things and he said, okay, this means religious stuff that, to my mind, I'm not going to investigate it any further. Patrick Gerald, to his credit, got beyond the religious imagery, saw the hyperdimensionality being focused on, took the numbers and looked at them relative to the sunspot cycle and said a big aha, the world is friggin' doomed, we better do something about it. And he may be exactly correct. There's a lot of the stuff, though, if we go back to the linguistics and we look at things like is the language that actually comes out of Lord Pakal, and some of the stuff on the Palenque and other sarcophagus. I'm not even really sure they're sarcophagus, but these giant lids with all sorts of graphics and multiple different layers of meaning that can be moved around to create whole stories. There seems to be a common theme in there relative to the Venus crossing, both of the Sun in 2012 and Venus appearing in Orion's belt at a specific time. This ties in not only the sunspot cycle at 11,500 years, it also ties in the 26,000-year precessional cycle, as well as these other cycles relative to Venus and its appearance in these major constellations. So there's a huge amount of astrological stuff, all pointing to a very specific day that is relatively unique. I've talked to astrologers, and this one guy says, well, in his lifetime, there's never been a situation with this particular alignment potential all the way through. So we use alignments relative to angular momentum to predict earthquakes. Anybody can do it. If you want to imagine the solar system as being viewed from below, in order to predict earthquake potential, you have to just look at where all the planets will be on a given day, especially the moon and the sun relative to Earth, and then all the other planets, and see whether the other planets are combining to assist the moon and the sun in their gravitational effects on the Earth, or canceling them out. If they're combining, we're likely to get an earthquake. If you factor in on top of that solar activity at the same time, we're much more likely to get an earthquake. So my way of thinking, if you start factoring in all this other weird alignment stuff, then we're much more likely to have actual physical effects. And beyond that, it's like 2012 is turning into a real chaos because of so many people putting in so many opinions on it. Our data cannot be relied on simply because the language is all getting too hot about it now. Maybe if I'd had the original data sets that I'd ran in 97 and 98, which I couldn't keep because they're too huge to store, we might be able to gain some more real meaningful data. I'm sure we'll get a lot more out of the immediacy data, but whether we'll have the ability to even analyze it this time next year is anybody's guess.
We have time for one more. Anyone?
I know that you have 6 more major ones slotted. Is that related to language as determining which ones might fit the bill? I mean, I know we had earthquake of 7.5 or something in Indonesia and Sumatra just like yesterday, but that probably wouldn't qualify because the language maybe wasn't as rampant, or I don't know. I mean, I'm just assuming, obviously, my own monkey mind, but I was just wondering about any comments on that.
You're correct. I don't put the one from Sumatra in with the 6 that we'd seen coming, of which Haiti, I think, was the first. Actually, the first. Haiti's the first. Chile was the first one that I'd commented about. Oh, yeah, we got 6 more. So I actually think there's 5 left. I don't put Sumatra in there because the level of damage so far hasn't hit the press enough to even come up to 8% the last time I ran the numbers. So here's how we do it. What I do is I basically go through the data, and there's a particular area in the Terra entity that shows very hot when we're going to get earthquakes, a lot of data points clustering around it, and we use various elements within the pixel, not only where the pixel is placed, but also its intensity and hue. So if we get a big boost in intensity and hue that attracts my eye, then I know we're going to get some earthquake activity. Then I look at a temporal marker. Then I go and check and see if there's any hyperdimensional, that is to say, angular momentum relationships, the various relationships of the planets to Earth that would support that. If that's the case, then I'll go and drill in on the data. And in this case, we had a total of 7 instances for the year where we had earthquake things pop up within the model space, all of which had damage on it to enough of a level that it shows up first in the language. And then, yes, I went and looked and found that throughout this whole year, we have all kinds of strange alignment potentials, especially from July through August, that will contribute to the hyperdimensional potential for earthquakes just because of the stress being placed on our planet.
Your bubble of time theory with the generator being within inside of it. Do you think that it could be like a simulate that specifically like say our solar system being up and the sun itself being the generator that creates the bubble? Because I know, like Dr. Kaku mentioned, that the only energy source strong enough to bend time would be a star, and then our sun being a star. Do you think that it's possible that our solar system itself is a bubble of time?
Boy, that's a really good idea. I never considered that. Essentially, that would have to be true, simply because of the way that solar systems and even galaxies act as they get close to the edge of the universe. They all appear to be, if you will, time independent from the rest of the universe as they reach the Einsteinian described thresholds, which, Einstein was incorrect, but nonetheless his description of what should happen at these levels does appear to be correct. Whether we're a meaningful time bubble is anybody's guess. In other words, does it help us to know this if that's the case? I don't know. The issue about the bending of time and the idea of being able to escape the troubles kind of thing is entirely local, and I came across it as work I was doing relative to the Russians, relative to some of the work they're doing in anti-radiation shields, these magnetic containment vessels called tokamaks generally, and the idea of room temperature smelting, especially tungsten and other metals. And so I started looking in their technology, and that's where I came across this idea, and I just happened to mention it because one of the ideas was, oh yeah, by the way, you could get inside this bugger and withstand a nuclear bomb, and then turn off your generator, and you're right back in reality, no problem.
closing the end of the hour, Cliff. I have one more because a lot of people were asking in the chat about Yellowstone, and maybe you already addressed it. I had to leave for a split second. Can you tell us, is Yellowstone in the webbots and maybe where that's going?
We have a lot of, okay, here's a problem with any of our geographic references. If you get a wave of people all freaking out about Yellowstone, we're going to pick up tons of geographic references about Yellowstone. So it may not be necessarily meaningful and could be engineered. That's one of those areas where people ask me, well, can you, could the powers that be come in and do things to engineer a particular effect in your work? And this is one of the ways they could, but as a rule, we have a tendency to disregard both geographic references, especially if they start mounting up, because I've seen these patterns before, especially around Yellowstone. It peaks almost on I think probably about a 5.5 month cycle. Everybody gets all freaked out, and then we wind down on it, and then everybody gets all freaked out again. And I don't know why these cycles exist. They may be pumping it relative, the powers that be may be pumping it relative to specific emotional things that they're trying to do. But because we get geographic references this way, and because there appear to be patterns in them that are consistent but not necessarily temporally related, I have a tendency to disregard them. So that having been said, yeah, we've got a lot of data about Yellowstone, but no, I don't necessarily think it's all that meaningful. Also bear in mind that there's a physical condition you have to go and examine. Yellowstone and a couple of the other mega volcanoes have already blown their wad. They won't be recreating the existing or the problems that occurred back when, because the conditions back then led towards pressurization, which can't occur now. So both Yellowstone and Krakatoa, for instance, which Krakatoa was part of Toba, the super volcano that's Indonesia, have blown off the massive mountains that used to exist over them. So there's nothing left to pressurize them. So even if they were to have an eruption, it would be unlike what occurred 600,000 years ago, where it blew dust all the way to Florida. It may indeed even be a volcanic eruption that starts rebuilding those mountains, and not really necessarily be that much of a threat to the environment, other than, if you happen to walk over to where the lava's going to get you, kind of like in Hawaii. But again, that would be a sign, not necessarily of any kind of a instant doom and gloom kind of a scenario, but it would certainly be a sign that the tectonic activity had upped itself, and we should all start paying attention, because basically it would be a hot spot very much like Hawaii that would be leaking through into the beyond the mantle layer. And when that stuff starts happening, that might be a sign that the equatorial bulge is collapsing, yet the very last sign before any kind of a pole shift.
And I'd like to extend a thank you for coming to GLP and spending time with us this evening.
All right, everybody. We would like to thank Clif High for coming to make the time to GLP and speak with us. We hope he enjoyed his stay. We extend an open invitation for him to return to GLP Unscripted again in the near future. Clif, I'll copy a copy of the show in a few days. You're welcome to post it on your site. Many thanks to Trinity, SHR, and Phoenix for making this event possible. Homeland Security, you can stop recording now. Thanks again, Clif. Good night, everybody.